Billy, and this is Show and Tell. And action! Happy New Year, everyone. I hope I'm among the first to wish you all the best for the year ahead, 2022. You know, for me, the beginning of 2022 will bring a new knit along, and that's what we're going to be talking about most of this episode. If you're new to this channel, welcome. I believe that there are a lot of new subscribers because of this knit along. But you know, just because you're a subscriber doesn't mean that you will get the notifications. I see from my YouTube analytics that only a small percentage of the subscribers have the bell turned on that has the little lines next to it. So if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, you want to look below the screen, look for the place that says subscribe, and you'll see 3 drop-down things. The top bell is the one that has the little ringy-dingy lines. That's the one you want to select. And then when I am getting ready to podcast, you'll get a little notification in the upper right-hand corner of your screen that tells you I'm about to begin. So that way you won't miss anything. Sometimes I'm live, and for this knit along, we will be going live. So a few more details about the knit along. It's starting January 15th. It's not my first knit along. I have done the Serdar chevron pattern, which was all over lace. And I've also done Susan Crawford's Genie, which was all over Fair Isle and took me 4.5 months. This will not be that. This is going to be, I believe, a much easier pattern, although depending on how you approach it, it may be time consuming. These are things that we will certainly talk about in our sessions together on Zoom. Below this box that I'm coming to you from, you'll see show notes, and you'll have to open them up where it says see more. You'll have to drop it down. In there, you will find a link to the free pattern, which has been provided to us graciously by today's guest, Lisa Stockebrand. And you'll also find a link to where you go to register for the knit along. I'll insert a picture here of the sweater in question. It's a sweater that was designed in 1927 by the famous French couturière, Elsa Schiaparelli. And it's called, lovingly, the Bowknot Sweater. In my prior episode, I talked about the life of Elsa Schiaparelli and her trompe-l'oeil sweaters, of which the Bowknot sweater is one. So I'll put a link up here for you to go and take a look at that. Particularly the people who are going to be participating in the knit along, I think that you might want to know a little bit more about the original designer. So again, January 15th, it's a Saturday. It will be noon on the East Coast of the United States, and depending on where in Europe you are, it would be 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. Other parts of the world, you'll have to do your own calculation of what the local time would be. And I can share with you that from my 2 prior knit-alongs, the response from the participants was it was really great to come together and compare notes and get tips from the other knitters. You might not be so experienced in one particular technique, for example, how to take a pattern that only comes in one size and scale it up to a larger size. There are many other things that people will want to weigh in on and share knowledge about. So it's great. I mean, it's great just from that perspective alone, but the camaraderie of doing something together, and it's not competitive. It's not a race to the finish, but I think there's a lot of moral support, and I think it helps everybody get a completed object instead of a UFO. So I hope that you'll consider joining us. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I know that at this point, there are already over 40 people signed up, and we can have many, many more. Zoom will accommodate 100 people on the type of account that I have. So I look forward to meeting you. Right now, we're going to go and meet Lisa Stockebrand. I'll be right back. I am back with Lisa. Lisa, say hello to my audience.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
It is such an incredible honor to meet you. You must be like one of the stars on Ravelry.
I just answer the questions people ask.
And it's very, very gracious of you, because there's something about this sweater that you have appropriated in a way, and we're going to talk about how this all came about.
Yep.
That you are the go-to person. You are the it girl when it comes to the Elsa Schiaparelli Bowknot Sweater, which hold up your thing and show us, because it's so exciting.
This is the third and final prototype.
Oh, it's really gorgeous. It's
you can
nice
see
the one that I've seen.
I didn't quite have the knitting technique down yet, so I'm actually thinking of knitting another one.
Oh, good. So you can knit along with us.
I might.
Okay, well, that would be very exciting.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell you a little something, because I know that you'll be familiar with the name Jean London, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Did you grow up in Philadelphia?
No, I did not, actually. I, like many people do, came to college in Philadelphia and just never left.
Okay, so unlike you, I grew up in Philly. And I want to do a screen share so I can show you this picture. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures, actually.
Cool. Yeah, my main experience with Jean London is he had an incredible collection, a costume collection, mostly of movie outfits and costuming. And there was a great show in Atlantic City maybe 15 years ago, which was so fun. And my girlfriend and I went down. We actually, we drove down to Atlantic City specifically to see it. And that was fun. That was a really fun show to see and I believe one of the costumes that was in that show was actually in the Schiaparelli show.
This is me on the right.
Oh, look at you.
And I had an opportunity to meet him again as a grown-up.
Oh my gosh.
This was at the Philadelphia Flower Show in 2015. I know since then he's passed away, but he had his costumes on display there. Now, before the flower show, I was already aware that he had loaned a lot of things to the Philadelphia Museum that were Schiaparelli that were in that show.
Yeah, there was one. It was an outfit that Mae West wore in, and I have this written down someplace. Heaven Can Wait was maybe the movie from 1937. Actually, hold on one second. Good thing I'm looking at my cheat sheet. So in the Schiaparelli show that we did, I think was in 2003.
Yes.
I can't believe it was that long ago. We did have a dress borrowed from Jean London. It was worn by Mae West, a dress and a hat, and she wore it in Every Day's a Holiday in 1937. So that was a fun one that was in the show. And I think we may have had one or two accessories as well, but that was the main outfit, was the Mae West outfit.
She figures quite significantly in the Schiaparelli story, because it's her form that's the form for the bottle of Shocking perfume.
Oh, is it? I was not aware of
that. Yes, when Schiaparelli was making the costumes for that film for her.
Yeah.
Mae West sent her a form, like a dummy. And when it arrived, Schiaparelli supposedly said Shocking. And they used that form for the shape of the bottle, and they named the perfume Shocking, and the rest is history. Back up a little and tell us about your association with the Philadelphia Museum of Art and with this exhibit from 2003, 2004?
Well, I went to college originally in the 80s and majored in Russian, which was surprisingly not helpful in the 80s, unless you wanted to sell tractors or work for the CIA. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had taken a whole lot of art courses as an undergrad. So I just sent resumes to everywhere in Philadelphia I thought would be fun to work. And one of those places was the art museum. And my first job there was as an administrative assistant to the director of special exhibitions. And this would have been in the early 80s. And I did that for 2 years, which helped me decide that what I really wanted to do was go back to art school. So I did that, and I majored in fibers, in crafts, which is, you know, weaving and a fiber ID and fabric construction and printmaking and like all kinds of that. It was really, really amazing.
Was that at Textile or somewhere else?
No, that was at Philadelphia College of Art, which is now University of the Arts.
Okay.
Right on Broad Street there. And you know, I always joke, every school I go to, they change the name of the school and then get rid of the major. So after that, I worked there for a while, but another friend of mine had gone back to school and gotten a degree in textile conservation and had gotten a job as the textile conservator at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And a series of events occurred. We had a large quilt show, for example, that needed to go to the Netherlands. So she called in myself and another woman who had, you know, new textiles, new fiber, had excellent sewing skills and hand skills to just basically sew Velcro on like 150 quilts that were going into the show. And that led to another just being called in, and then another just being called in, which over the course of a few years led to a part-time permanent position as the technician in textile conservation, which is what I've done for the last 20 years. And that involves all kinds of stuff. A lot of mount making. I do a lot of support services for the conservators, like dye fabrics to match, dye threads to match, take notes, help measure things, be an extra pair of hands. I made most of the soft mounts in the museum. What I specifically did with Schiaparelli, what was also happening at the same time that we were moving from the costume and textile department was moving from the main building, you know, the one that you see, you know, where the Rocky steps are,
To across the Parkway?
Yeah, to across the street to the Perlman building, which is, if you're a old-time Philadelphian, is the old Reliance Insurance building. And so that was all happening at the same time of Schiaparelli. So we were kind of going back and forth with doing a lot of survey work, which of course we were able to do a lot with the Schiaparelli show. The two dovetailed because we were able to then get excellent like measurements and siding and sizing and assess the just the physical condition of the gowns and the costumes and the textiles, because I don't know if you're aware that the museum in 1969 we were given about 78 objects by Elsa Schiaparelli herself.
Wow.
And there was not a costume and textile department at the time. It was called the fashion group. So we ended up with about 35 costumes, and the rest to make up about 78, 79 objects are like brooches and jewelry and shoes. We have quite an extensive Schiaparelli.
Besides
there.
Bowknot Sweater, are there other sweaters in the Philadelphia?
Yes, there are, not a lot. We have one other sweater and another partial sweater that we think is a bathing costume top. It's in the catalog, I believe. It's a green fish. these are all photographed. If you're interested in seeing them, if you go on the Philadelphia Museum of Art's website, you can, I forget exactly what it's called, but it's like Tour Our Collections, and it's a database. If you type in Schiaparelli, all the Schiaparelli stuff will come up, and Schiaparelli related things.
I've done
and
that at the Metropolitan Museums.
Yeah, they had some,
They
have
have
great sweaters.
343, I think, objects, give or take, of hers. I don't know that any of them, I don't know if any were donated by her personally, but they don't have a Bowknot sweater. But the V&A in London has a Bowknot sweater.
Yes. Yes.
So I was going to ask you, do you know where other Bowknot sweaters exist in the world, in the collection?
I would have to double check this. I'm pretty sure the Musée de la Mode probably has some in Paris, which is the fashion part within the Louvre. They're doing a show in the fall of this year. I don't know what it's called, but we are loaning several Schiaparellis to that show. And if you're interested, you should have a look on their site. It's the Musée de la Mode, and it's under the Musée, I don't speak French, the Musée de la Arts Décorative, which is sort of under the umbrella of the Louvre. So there's a Schiaparelli, I think Drexel may have some sweaters, I'm remembering. I would have to double check that. I'm not sure on that. I can write that down and check.
I didn't know that they have an art collection.
Drexel has an excellent, a small but excellent historical textile collection.
I haven't checked with FIT either, but you know, it's interesting since I located two, and I know the Met has a different sweater, not the Bowknot. So getting back to your work at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, so now you're helping mount these things and transport.
Yeah, mostly I dyed a lot of pink fabric for that show. Yeah.
How did you come to get access to the sweater to create the pattern? That's what I really want to know.
What's very interesting is Dilys Blum, who is the curator, and she is still the curator of costume and textiles at the museum. While she was doing research, the catalog, I mean, as you're aware, she wrote the catalog. And as she was researching all the sweaters, she came across, well, these sweaters were one of the big things that put Schiaparelli on the map, because this was sort of like, as I'm sure all your listeners are well aware, this was the 19-teens and 20s was a big era of women's sportswear just beginning, like women playing tennis and playing golf and all this kind of stuff. So these sweaters really put Schiaparelli, this was like one of her first big, let's get on the map sort of things. And so they were in shops and they were ripped off and copied left and right, which is totally normal, still happens in fashion today. But what Dilys came across was a Ladies' Home Journal article on page 173 from November of 1928. I don't know how well you can see that.
Oh, yeah.
Which has a copy of, and I'm sorry, this is like a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox, but that's you can't really see it, of these two sweaters. This is not a Schiaparelli, but this is a ripoff of a Schiaparelli, the trompe-l'oeil sweater. But it's written, you know, it's written in kind of sketchily, and it's in quite a large gauge. So having found this, we're like, I wonder if we could recreate it, because we actually own the sweater. These are the two, actually have it here. These are the two that we have in our collection. This one's kind of cool because the bow is red. So this one's really cool too.
I have an image of that with the red.
Yeah.
I'll show it in a second.
Yeah, but it's really cool because this is ours. I mean, we own this, and it is, you know, as an institution, and it's pretty much, you know, what they copied. So we contacted the Schiaparelli Foundation and asked if they minded if we you know, try to give it a go. So we started sampling yarns, and that was difficult to find a yarn. And we were then able to work with Schoolhouse Press, who at the time was the importer of Shetland wools. And they still do have a beautiful selection of the Jameson wool. And we tested 5 or 6 different yarns, and that worked the best, gave the best sort of reconstruction. I could talk about that too. And so we thought, well, let's try and reproduce it. So we did, and it was pretty fun, because I got to sit with the actual sweater and like measure it and deconstruct it, and you know, watch how the floats were done, because you can see the so-called Armenian knitting technique. You can see in the photograph even the floats across the back. And
were you able to turn it inside out, or that's like against the conservators' rule?
I could turn it inside out because I work there.
So you did turn it inside out.
But you don't really need to, because you could, you know, you can see.
It looks like that all over.
Yeah, and if you go onto the museum site and you can put the picture, they're beautiful, you know, like nowadays, everything's digital. So, you know, you can really see a lot of the structure of the stitching and how it all, you know, and how it was done. Where, you know, way back 20 years ago, it was a more difficult, it was really helpful to look at the actual object, to be able to determine.
What information were you picking up from looking at the actual sweater? Were you counting the number of stitches? Were you?
Yeah, we did a gauge, and I actually cannot find my original notes. I've got a lot of, you know, how we figured it out, charting out the designs and all of that. The gauge of the original is closer to maybe 8 stitches to the inch. It's a very fine Shetland wool. It's it's very soft, and we couldn't find anything that we could obtain within our resources as, you know, textile people, not yarn shop owners or something. We could not find anything that was equivalent. Very close are the fine spun, and these were fine spun Shetland wool. We could find the beautiful Jameson Shetland wools. They're not as soft. They don't knit up with the same hand as the sweaters from the 20s, which is to be expected because it's not the same. So when we decided to sort of redo the pattern, we figured most people would not be interested in knitting, because at the time Schoolhouse Press did have a Jameson, a Shetland wool that could knit up to that gauge. And that's something that I might try to do. So we went more for their 2-ply, which is what you see here, which is a little finer than the Ladies' Home Journal, but not anywhere near as fine as the original sweater. But you get the same effect, which is like this nice sort of tweed-like effect. And it's also like lighter than you think, which is nice because the front-facing cloth is knit at a looser gauge than you would knit it if you were knitting singly, because you're catching all the floats every few stitches in the back. So you have sort of a slightly more open knit structure, but all the floats in the back make it extremely warm. And you need to have like a Shetland wool because it has the little fibers that like poke out of the yarn. That those fibers, like a mohair lace is so beautiful, those fibers actually help maintain the loftiness and they keep the stitches slightly separate from each other and keep sort of the whole loft of the whole structure. If you try it with a very smooth wool, like the more modern wools, the fabric is just kind of dead. It doesn't have the life or the spring That's something with a little rougher or a little bit of, like, I don't quite know how to explain it, but you know, when the little fibers kind of like escape.
Toothiness?
Little, like springiness, like a nice boinginess. I don't know, but I don't know if you can see, like, there's spare fibers that kind of come out. So if you want to,
I've seen some people knit it in some yarn where the back color is not poking through, and that might be why they're using something smooth.
Right, and a lot of
what's
people
the point? Like, you know,
well, a lot of people have also decided to knit it using intarsia, which is fine. In my opinion, just aesthetically, either knit it in what it's supposed to be knitted in, or use a wool that you love and do it in intarsia, because you're not going to get that same effect. But there are beautiful, much more than in 2000, beautiful yarns that will give you like a tweedy look, you know, like the Rowan tweeds. There's some like Kelborn wools are beautiful, beautiful. So you can get the tweed. It'll be very different, but you'll get that sort of interesting look, and you could do it in intarsia. Or if your aesthetic is such you like the whole color block thing, then just do it in intarsia and save yourself the trouble of all the floating across the back, because it won't serve the purpose that the original did.
Well, you know that on January 15th, I'll be launching this knit along.
Yes, I know. I'm excited.
And I already have about 35 people who have signed
Oh, that's
up.
terrific.
And I anticipate that between now and then, more people will join on. I know that these are questions that people are going to have. I know they're questions that I have. So I did want to ask you, I mean, I've already asked you if you would be able to be there, but if you're not able to be there, would you be willing?
Yes.
Would you be willing to answer questions of people if you're not there? Like if people comment on this with all their questions, are you available to answer those?
So yes, I knew about the knit along, and I am planning to be at it. So far, my work schedule will allow me to participate in at least the January 15th. Additionally, starting, I'm not going to commit myself to starting tomorrow, but starting within the next day or two, I will check by Ravelry more than once or twice a month. Like I'll try and check by Ravelry like every day, every other day. And you can ask me any questions that you would like. You can message me through Ravelry, and my Ravelry name is lasdcm.
I will put that on the screen, and it'll be also in the show notes. It's very generous of you.
Yeah, and I'm happy to answer any questions. A lot of times I get the same questions over and over, so don't be insulted if I send you like a canned paragraph. But a lot of people ask the same basic question. But what you have to understand is this is only written in one size, and I have a tip. Our goal was not to write a pattern for a sweater like I worked for Rowan Yarns or Debbie Bliss or something like that. We were using an existing historical source to try and make what would have been a home knitter's reasonable recreation of a designer sweater. So there are certain things about it. The armholes are cut like armholes from the 20s and 30s. It's a much less generous fit than a modern user is used to wearing.
You froze up again.
We've had great success with people knitting and I believe this is in the instructions. We've had great success with people knitting a gusset strip and picking out the seam and just putting a gusset in. And that has worked really well to sort of ease it up a little, and yet you're still keeping the basic silhouette. The fit is close. So the sleeves are tight. I mean, we went with the vintage measurements from the Ladies' Home Journal article.
Oh, not from the sweater itself.
The measurements are from the Ladies' Home Journal article because the sweater itself is so tiny. Nobody would be able to wear it. So the sweater from the Ladies Home Journal is about a 36, give or take. And again, you can adjust it quite a bit just by adding gussets or adding, like, it's very easy to add a few stitches onto the side. If you want to completely change the pattern to like an extra large, that's outside my skill set.
Okay, fair enough. Also, I should mention that people can put questions here on the comments section, and that's a place where you could be checking, or I could forward them to you. So I mean, that might be convenient while they're watching if they think of something, rather than having to go out to Ravelry and come back.
Right. And on the kickoff, I'm happy to answer any questions that come up that I can.
I hope we get a lot of questions out of the way before January 15th. So on January 15th, we can talk about other things. But can you go back to the picture that you showed us that had the little drawings? Because I noticed that the white collar in the back is sticking up, and I wanted to know. Right. So
this is a pencil drawing.
It looks like the collar is meant to be not attached in the back, which would be very cool.
Yeah, no, but it is attached. This is a pencil drawing with my measurements. It's 11 inches. It's 11 inches from here to here. Here's a better picture of the actual sweater that this is a Xerox of. And this is what you get if you go through the Schoolhouse Press site to get to the free pattern. This is the front page that you'll get. So you'll have this yourself with some information.
I will put links below on where to find everything that you're going to need if you want to join in the fun. So I noticed that this pattern is available for free.
Yeah.
Can you tell us why?
Because of copyright issues. It's sort of a gray area, because even though we were basing it off of the Ladies Home Journal, which is of course at this point in time all in public domain, the Schiaparelli estate is even more active now than it was at the turn of the 2000s. It's a very active, very vibrant, it's a design house, and it's still functioning, and they graciously gave us permission to, because we clearly were copying a Schiaparelli sweater, and we were using the Schiaparelli name. So they graciously allowed us to publish this pattern with acknowledging where it was from and what the purpose of the pattern is, as long as we kept it free and in the public domain. You cannot earn any money off of this pattern. It's a protected copyright, and you'll get in trouble with the Schiaparelli estate. We partnered with Schoolhouse Press during the time of the show, and had permission only for the duration of the show to put a kit together. We did a purple and pink kit and a black and white kit with the required yarn, which we went through Schoolhouse Press, and we worked with them a lot. They were great.
Yarn did they end up putting in the kit?
The Jameson, yeah, hold on one second, I'll grab some. Okay, now this yarn has been around for a while. The packaging may have changed. But this has been around for a while. The packaging may have changed. This is the 2-ply jumper yarn. And this is what we designed the pattern, because this pretty much fit the gauge of the Ladies Home Journal pattern. You can see the 3-ply jumper. If you wanted to be, and that was a colorway, this is some of the purple that we use with a shocking pink.
So what did the gauge end up being, and how different is that gauge when you're doing it with Armenian knitting as opposed to just plain stockinette?
The Armenian knitting, and again, I we did not research this knitting technique. Elsa herself talks about, and it talks about this on the front page, running into these Armenian women who were knitting these sweaters, and they had a really nice, she called it a steady look. So they had a very nice drape and a very nice hand, and they weren't like floppy and over. And that's because of all the floats across the back, of course, keeping everything nicely disciplined while keeping all the flexibility in. And so that's where is the historical Armenian technique? I do not know. This is not something we researched. This is something we took from Schiaparelli. And she referred to it as the Armenian technique. So that's how we as the museum came up with that term. And all it is it's your typical Fair Isle or colorwork knitting, with the exception of you are continuing to carry that yarn back and forth and not stopping like in intarsia. And you're not putting like little motifs in like you would in Norwegian knitting, where you do those little lice patterns, the little dots to help keep your yarn across. You're actually catching the yarn up, the float up in your stitches every 2 or 3 stitches. So what you end up with is a smooth surface in the back of all your floats, and those floats showing through a slightly looser than normal knitting is what gives you the loft, the hand and the warmth, and the not a tweed yarn, it's the underneath color showing through the holes in the knit stitch. Does that make sense?
So the gauge.
I'm a talker. Oh, you asked me about the gauge. Yeah, it's about 5.25 stitches to the inch. If you were to knit this into like a Fair Isle sweater, you'd be wanting to get more like 7 stitches to the inch. But because this stitch is a little bit more open to get the softness, you're knitting it at a slightly larger gauge, but because you have that second layer of fabric in effect behind it, it all holds together.
So if I'm understanding correctly, if people are looking for a yarn to start knitting with, they should look for something that gives on the label 7 stitches per inch, and know that they're not going to get 7 stitches per inch if they're doing it in this double layer method.
If they're going to do this double. Now, I have not read the Armenian knitting book that came out, that Schoolhouse Press put out. I have not read that book. So I cannot comment on it. But if you happen to have that book, I would say have a look at it and see if they discuss gauge, because that might be very, very helpful. But as you can see, this is a really loose open gauge because all the black floats behind are showing through. Like you wouldn't, if you ignore the black, this is kind of sloppy gauge. And this is about 5.5 to the inch. And you do have to, and when I say, it's like a, steam, just like a hot steam block, you don't touch the iron to the fabric, but give a good of the steam and pat it all out and, do your floofy knitting thing. And that's what you'll get. So, because these sweaters, the ones in the collection, the older ones, they pressed the crap out of those sweaters. I mean, they're creased and folded and ironed. I mean, they're not all like gentle and floofed.
I had the impression that it would be very stiff because of this double layer, but based on what you're saying, it sounds like it's done at such a loose gauge that it has a pretty good. And I was thinking of not doing it in the Armenian knitting method, but just doing it in tarsia, so that I did something that was very drapey. But it sounds like I don't have to.
It's not drapey, but it's soft. I don't quite know how to describe it. It's a very pleasant hand. I mean, it's not drapey like satin or drapey like a knit fabric, but it's also not as stiff as you think it is. It's like it's kind of like stiffer this way and not so stiff that way, if that makes any sense. So it has, also because the yarn is a Shetland wool, so that is a springy, you know, that's a yarn with a lot of body and a lot of springiness. So that helps with it too, but it's a little itchy. I mean, it's Shetland wool, but it's, you know, it's super comfortable to wear.
So another question, because you're carrying both along all the time, do you need twice the amount of wool that you would need for a stockinette sweater?
Maybe 1.5 to 1 2/3, because again, you're not knitting.
It's not going around the needle.
It's just a float. And you're knitting this at a slightly looser gauge. So, you know, the looser the sweater, the looser the gauge, the less yarn you need, because there's big, you know, there's bigger holes where there isn't any yarn. So yes, you need more yarn, but not as much more as you think you would. And again, this was written for very specific purposes. So there's a very specific, you know, 8 balls of the main color and 6 balls of the contrast color. So you don't need the same amount, because there's so much of the main color that you use a lot less, you know, there's very little of it on the back. So you use a lot less of the contrast color.
Right. That's the sweater that you showed before in black and white on the right with the red bow. I thought that this might have been, now that Schiaparelli is reorganized and their house is open again, I thought that this might have been a contemporary one, but you're saying, no, this is part of the 1927 collection also?
Yes, this is in our collection as well, both these sweaters.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now, what other sweaters do we know of? I mean, I have the one from the Met, the green one with the necktie that I can show, but
right,
are there sweaters that are known from this genre?
But if you start poking around, it's like, check out this one.
Oh.
Now it's all in French, so I have no idea where it's from or what it is.
Oh.
Modes de Travaux. I mean, you know, there was a lot of this. This was a big thing. A lot of people copied her, and a lot of people were doing this. This became very, very popular. Here it is in pink.
Now, is that her colors, or that was the colors that Philadelphia?
We thought this would be fun to have another option besides just black and white. And
this is not Schiaparelli's color scheme?
No, this is not. This is one that I knit for a client. So we just thought shocking pink would be great. And what would go fun with shocking pink might be purple. So we just put together the 2 options.
I did read an excerpt from her book in which it mentioned that there were other color schemes. It wasn't only black and white. There was one that was shocking pink. Now, I don't know if it was black with a pink bow or if it was.
I would personally do black with a pink bow. I think that'd be awesome.
Because I'm, you know, still figuring out what I want to make, whether I want to do the Armenian, which I don't think I want to, because I don't think I want something that's that warm.
Right.
I want something that's drapey, and I'm not afraid of 7 or 8 stitches to the inch. People who have been watching my show know that I did something that was 46 stitches to 4 inches. So that's 11.5 stitches to 1 inch. So
you have frozen.
Scares me anymore. Nothing. So yeah, I was interested in the different variations, whether it's Armenian or intarsia, because I know that is the biggest question. And then, yes, I also thought of possibly doing it in tweed, like a black tweed that would have white, to get a similar effect, but I haven't found a corresponding white that has the black tweed that will be in a gauge that I want to work with, like fingering.
Yeah, the white's tricky.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you. The sleeves on the cover of her book, her autobiography, there's a drawing of a woman sitting in a chair wearing the sweater, the Bowknot sweater. but the sleeve is a different sleeve. It kind of flares out and it looks like it might even have a slit.
That's possible.
Have you seen it with other
No,
sleeve treatment?
no, I personally have not, but I've only seen maybe 4 of these sweaters, 4 or 5
And
of
they
these
were
sweaters.
all like yours, black with white bow.
Do you know?
Are you going to be able to go to the Paris show?
No, I wish. I am going to make some mannequins for the Paris show, however. So that'll be my treat. So we need to make some of the dresses are so small and so fragile. We want to send them pre-dressed and with the best care that we can. And a lot of they fit these women who were so tiny. So you just can't get a mannequin that small. So we will oftentimes either take an existing mannequin and cut it down and then sort of rebuild it, back the way it was, only smaller. Or we're going to custom mannequin or a custom cover for a mannequin so that it looks just like all the other mannequins from what you can see. But what goes on behind the scenes of a costume exhibition is pretty extraordinary.
I would think it must be a magical place to work, because I live in New York. The Metropolitan Museum is my go-to museum. And
oh yeah.
Sometimes when I'm there just at opening time and I see the people who work there arriving with their badges so they can get in a special door, they look so happy. They're so happy to go to work because I know they're doing something that they must really, really enjoy and love and be passionate about. And it's got to be the most exciting institution to work for. But I know the Philadelphia Museum is up there. I mean, it's not the Met, but it's on the world stage. I mean, and it has.
Oh yeah. Well, we have a it's not the Met, but we have a pretty extraordinary collection, and a lot of it doesn't get seen. We were hoping with the Perlman building in our own exhibition space that we would be able to get a little more exposure. And for a while we did, and then plague time. So that has put, we don't need to talk about
I've never been in that building. It's a little bit off-putting to have to leave one building, go across not just a street. It's like,
well, I keep telling them that, the main building is so high, we should just run a zip line. I tell them that and they don't believe, they just don't think that's a good idea to have people zip lining across Fairmount Avenue.
Well, not zip lining, but maybe there could be some bridge built, or who knows? I mean,
yeah, it would
it's
have
not going to happen. Underground.
No, there's actually train tracks underground. There's a subway line. It's all Amtrak right of way. There's a subway that was supposed to run up the parkway that was never completed.
Oh, bummer.
I know. I want to take one of those like underground city tours, like the underground tour of Philadelphia. Like all these things have been built that you never get to see because they were never completed or didn't meet a safety standard or something. Like that would be really cool.
Sure
I want to make one comment of the pattern. If people are going to jump ahead and download the pattern, please understand that this was done before there was like nice knitting software that any of us knew about. And another, I just want to say another huge help I got from Schoolhouse Press was Joyce Williams, who ended up writing the Armenian knitting book, helped us basically do the schematic, because other than teach myself Excel, I had no clue how to, we're museum technicians. I had no idea of any knitting software or how to graph out the pattern other than, take graph paper, do it by hand. So this was like, I'm not going to say it was state of the art at the time, because I really have no idea, but this is like, Joyce did this. She volunteered. She did this for us pro bono. It was wonderful that she did it. One little thing, because we wanted to be sure it all fit, the graphs all fit on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, is there's this funny little jig jag.
Oh yeah.
That's like, you don't knit that. That's supposed to be like those little hash marks where it's like 3 inches missing here. Ask about that all the time, but what it is it's just, there's rows missing here because you're perfectly capable of knitting 3 inches plain without having it to be charted out. It's also on the back. Oh, and the other thing is the backs and fronts are not the same size. That's because the fronts were all back in the day, not all of them. I'm making generalizations. The fronts were larger. The shoulder seams didn't lie on top of the shoulder. They went towards the back. People tended to wear girdles and have better posture. You'll see this also in older vintage garments from like the 17th and 18th centuries. The shoulder seams are very far back and people were, the silhouette of the day was a very conical with excellent posture, pulled back and sitting in your corset, very straight with your busk.
If I sit up straight, you can see my bow.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, look at you. Oh, that's terrific.
Have to sit up straighter. I wanted to ask you about the intarsia because I know that there's something called shaped intarsia where you don't get all those little jig-jags and steps. Would it be sacrilegious to do that and not have all that?
If you want to figure it out, you can make this with bulky yarn from Michaels and an 8-bit jig-jaggy fingering weight, no jig-jags at all. I'm all for, taking this as a launching point and doing whatever you want with it. What we were doing and what this pattern is a historical reconstruction of a knockoff. And that was our goal. That was our aim. That's all we did. I have not seen anyone do this in intarsia in real life, but there's some of the pictures on Ravelry. They're beautiful. They're beautiful. I don't have any, as long as you understand where we were coming from, you are free to come at it from whatever way you choose. I'm just tickled. This is like the sweater that wouldn't die. I mean, it just sort of like Schiaparelli. It comes up and then I don't hear anything for years at a time. And then it like bubbles up again. I just think it's wonderful. I mean, she was a terrific designer. She was a hilariously interesting person, bowling in her leopard shoes. And the sweaters are great. Trompe-l'oeil is a great thing. And like trompe-l'oeil, it pops up like a couple of years ago.
Say the name of the book again because you broke up.
It's a Juniper Moon Farms, one of their pattern leaflets from maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago. My time scale with plague times, my time scale is like, I figure like everything I think I have to like add a year or two to it. But they did a trompe-l'oeil sweater with a like a necktie. I mean, I like seeing it just like popping up and coming and just continuing to like, pop to the forefront. I think is great. We call it the sweater that won't die. And I'm happy with that.
I'm very excited to do it. I'm hoping that other people will be excited to do it as well. And it'll be very interesting to see the different variations that people do. After my conversation with you this evening, I'm probably going to not do it in black and white. I was pretty convinced ahead of time, oh, be classic, do it exactly the way it was meant to be done. But no, maybe it's going to be something with shocking pink because that's also
sure
associated with Schiaparelli, and it's going to be tweed. I'm pretty sure I'm not doing that whole scaffolding in the back.
Yeah, it's a really neat thing, and it's like we're trying to do a gauge swatch and see what you think, but it's like, I mean, you're the boss of your knitting. Knit it
right. Have you tried
knit it how you want, what you're going to enjoy and what you're going to wear and what you're going to enjoy knitting.
The ones that you have knit, have you tried them on? And
they're tight in the armholes and skinny in the I mean, it's like if you're used to wearing and learning about vintage clothing, that or just look at any black and white movie, all particularly women are shaped differently than we are now because they all had on girdles and the girdles changed, or they had the bullet bras, or or you had the Jean Harlow shoulders, or you had the Marilyn Monroe, big boobs and puffy. It's like women's silhouettes change and the garments change for the silhouette. And in this time period, things were much more close. You're just used to your clothes fitting much more tightly and much more loosely. Also, with pretty much everybody buys their clothes off the rack. And even though every human is a different size, a size 8 or a 10 or 12 needs to fit a variety of people. So, there's little cheats, like our armholes tend to be cut bigger, busts tend to not be as fitted, things tend to be more loose, and you get a much broader range of fitting capabilities, people being able to wear off the rack garments, and they still look like how they were meant to look. Here's a cheat. I'm thinking I've been inspired by this is I actually got a lace weight of the Shetland, and maybe I'll try and redo the graphs for a 7 stitches to the inch. I'm gonna knit a gauge swatch this weekend. To do these Shetland wools, it's like its whole own thing. Like now you can get them like Jameson, you can buy them straight from Jameson. Like they're a lot easier to get a hold of now than they were in 2000, 2001. I have a Rowan tweed, which might work, but yeah, they make.
What's the gauge of the Rowan tweed that you have? Is it DK or is it?
It's like a DK, yeah. I mean, you can push it. You could push it to a worsted, but I like it knit at a DK.
So that sounds like it would be perfect for this. Does it come in black?
Mm-hmm. It could work.
Does it come in black and white?
Yes, the white though has a lot of blue flecks.
Oh, well, if you're starting to knit or swatch before January 15th, don't forget to go to Instagram, #Bowknot KAL, so that we can all see what everybody else is doing. And then as we're knitting on our sweaters, that'll be a great place to post pictures. Okay, so to wrap it up, let's just remind everybody, January 15th, noon Eastern. So if you're in Europe, it's probably 5 or 6 in the evening, depending on where you're at. California, sorry, it's going to be 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning. But hopefully Lisa will be there with us. I know I'll be there. And I'm really looking forward to this adventure that we're all going to take together. Lisa, I cannot thank you enough. It's been a pleasure to meet you online.
I know. Absolutely. It's been a thrill talking to you. It's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. And now I'm as we were saying, the sweater comes and its sweater goes. So I'm kind of excited about it coming to the forefront again. And I may do a little lace weight swatching if you want to look at my Instagram.
I hope you do, because I really would like to possibly do that and try the Armenian, and there'll be all kinds of modifications. I really can't wait to see what all the other people are going to do, because I bet there are not too many people who are going to do it exactly as the pattern.
Right. Well, I will be sure as I swatch to Instagram and #Bowknot KAL, right? Bowknot KAL. Yeah. So I'll be everyone hashtag that so we can see what people are interested in. So it's exciting. This will be really fun. This will be really fun.
I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Happy New Year. I mean, we're recording this before New Year. It's not going to be until after New Year.
I know, but you're in New York. You're in the best place. Have a great New Year.
Oh, thank you. I'll be staying inside my apartment, most likely.
Yeah, but you could open your windows and listen for the who's in Whoville or whatever you do.
I'm going to let my new mayor take office at Times Square after the ball falls.
Oh, fantastic.
Man.
Wow.
All right, thank you again. Say bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I think I'm done. I just want to show you one other thing. Let me,
Mhm.
this is going to be tricky for me. Okay, I don't know if you know Barrowdale Road.
No, it's in Jenkintown. Okay, wait, where's my phone?
Well, it's real. Here, I'll just show it to you. It's not really. When you're going up Washington Lane,
Yep.
or you get to that underpass that takes you over to Susquehanna,
Yep.
just before that little bridgey thing, it's a very unusual right turn,
Yep.
like a dangerous right turn. It goes down this hill. This property right here
Yeah.
on the corner of Barrowdale and Leopard was built by my step grandfather.
Really? Barrowdale Road in Jenkintown. Okay, I'm Googling. Oh, there it is.
The house,
Barrowdale and Leopard.
the house across the street is like a European castle behind a gate. When I did this on Google Maps, it's all blurred out.